What are your thoughts on what his stat line is going to look like in 2025? Because I know some of the listeners have been wanting to get our thoughts on that. Right now, my current stat prediction, and for anyone that doesn't know, last season he threw 29 touchdowns to 12 interceptions and 3,775 yards. My prediction, I have him at Welcome back to another episode of the Broncos Avenue podcast. I'm your host, Amir Farrell. My co-host, Evan Petruk. The Denver Broncos are signing a very productive tight end out of college who had 3 straight 400-yard seasons to close out his collegiate career and spent some time with the Detroit Lions. We'll talk about that. And later on, we'll provide a full breakdown and predictions for our tight end room in 2025, as well as a Bo Nix stat prediction. I know someone recently in our comments wanted us to do an episode on that, so here we go. And let us know down in the comments what you guys want us to cover in future episodes as well. We'll be sure to read those. But Evan, how are you doing, man?
Oh, I'm good, man. Work's been, again, going steady and enjoying doing the pods and just another day down closer to actually watching football. So
Interesting things going on in your background right now. I can't quite
I
tell.
don't know. Something feels different about my wall, but I'm
Yeah.
not really sure exactly what it is. So.
Can't quite put a finger on it, man. Let's go ahead and jump right into this news, man. The Broncos are signing rookie undrafted free agent tight end Caden Prieskorn, who signed with the Detroit Lions right after the draft before being waived just 2 weeks later. So Sean Payton and the Broncos essentially scooped him up from Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions. What are your thoughts overall on this signing and what he's bringing to the Broncos?
Well, he's got very prototypical tight end size at 6'5", 255. Really lacks in effort on run blocking. It's more effort all around. He looks sluggish in his routes. He had a huge advantage playing at Ole Miss where he was getting schemed open a lot, and so that kind of helped his stat lines a little bit and made him look a little bit better. He's got very good hands, but he just looks lazy and sluggish running around. So, I mean, he's a developmental piece. I don't think he's going to make the roster. I think maybe he could be a practice squad player at best, but he just lacks that, it almost looks like effort. I hate to say it because this guy's like obviously in the NFL and I'm not, but like, it seems like he's not giving 100% on every play. He's got great size to be a good run blocker, but he's really not. I mean, he kind of just relies on being bigger than the guys. So if you just get a guy that wants it more, that's around the same size as him, he's not going to be able to block him. And he's got solid, reliable hands, but he's not fast coming out of his routes. I think he had the 6th worst 40 for tight ends at the combine. So I don't think that it's something that you're like, oh, wow, this guy's going to gun for Evan Engram's job.
Hey, don't start preventing the Caden Prieskorn agenda that I'm about to. Yeah. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to be that one. Although people are, I saw someone defending Lucas Kroll in our comments the last episode, which is
it was Cecil Lammy's burner.
It was interesting to say the least, but. He's like 6'5". Prieskorn's like 6'5", 250. You would think he's a little bit better at blocking. Obviously, he was productive, at times in college, both Memphis and, like you mentioned, Ole Miss. Overall, though, right now our tight end room, Nate Atkins, Evan Engram, Adam Trotman, Caleb Lohner, Lucas Kroll, and Caden Prieskorn. Who do you think? Last year the Broncos carried 4 tight ends with Greg Dulcich being in that room last year. Obviously, they had high hopes for him. Did not live up to that, so the tight end room in general just kind of flopped in 2024. This year, obviously, with the addition of Evan Engram, we're expecting a lot more, obviously. Who were the tight ends you were expecting to make the roster this year with taking into consideration there was 4 on the roster last year?
I consider Nate Atkins a tight end still. So I'm going to count that in there because obviously I think Michael Burton's going to be on the team. So, and I don't think they're going to let Nate Atkins go. So probably Nate Atkins, Adam Troutman, and Evan Engram. And I think that Kroll and Prieskorn get cut or are on the re-sign on the practice squad or something like that. But I don't think Kroll is going to be on the team. He didn't show enough last year for the coaching staff to, he had a huge opportunity, right? Like he was a practice squad guy, had a huge opportunity, got brought into Denver, and he could have performed and he had the opportunity. I know he wasn't getting design targets or anything like that, but he wasn't, doing anything special with his opportunity. So I think that the fact that he just missed out on the moment, it definitely it affects his standings on the roster.
Yeah, I would agree. Adkins, Ingram, Trotman, and Loner is where I would go here.
Oh, sorry, I forgot Caleb Loner. Yes, Loner as well.
Yeah, I think. And what are your overall thoughts? Because we broke down that pick right after the draft, and I personally liked the pick. I think I gave it like an A minus. Like he is such a freak athlete. Obviously, he has way more experience playing basketball than football, which I know a lot of Broncos fans just freaked out about. But what are your overall thoughts on what he's going to provide as another U on this team?
Yeah, no, I think that he's just that freakish athletic build. Like, what is he, like 6'7" or something
Yeah,
like
like
that? Like, he's
six,
huge,
six,
man.
seven, like two
Yeah.
sixty, I think, something crazy like that. 250, 260, like
He's a freak, and he's not like obviously he doesn't have enough football experience to because he didn't play football until this past year since playing in high school. So he's not gonna be like he's literally gonna be like it's like fucking red zone, and he's gonna be getting subbed in to go
yeah,
box someone out. Like, but I mean, hey, it works, man. Like, there's no way he doesn't make the 53. Like he's not going to be on the practice squad because someone will so easily just scoop him up. But he's another developmental piece that Sean Payton, he loves his big tight ends. So I think that that Loner's definitely got a roster spot, and I think Adkins proved himself enough last year. Troutman, just a veteran in that room. I mean, I realistically like Troutman brings that blocking element to the table that Evan Engram sometimes kind of lacks. But I think Nate Atkins can really. It's kind of hard because Nate Atkins is kind of that like tweener between a fullback and a tight end. But it's like he can't take Michael Burton's spot because we have Michael Burton, but he's not taking Troutman's spot because we have Troutman. So I don't really know what they're going to get him to play if one of those guys leaves. But I just I definitely see those four guys and they're all going to be on roster spots. So but like Sean Payton loves tight ends. So I assume we're going to be running a lot of 12 personnel with either Troutman, Adkins, as well as Evan Ingram's always going to be the tight end on the field. So I can see him getting moved around in the slot and even doing a bit of blocking work in line as well.
yeah, I can see Loner being like an extra blocker like we used a lot with those extra offensive linemen in 2023. We did that a lot, I believe, with it was one of our offensive linemen. In the last year, you saw a little bit with Per, and I think you could do. Obviously, it's way easier to do that in terms of eligibility with your tight ends, bringing in an extra blocker on those jumbo heavy packages. So I'm really excited to see what he can provide as both a blocker and receiver. And I think the other ones are kind of given, man. Like Nate Atkins, they literally cut or they didn't resign Michael Burton until like way later in the offseason, and Nate Atkins was the guy for like he was going to be that projected starting fullback. So they clearly do believe in his versatility at both fullback and tight end position. And obviously on the depth chart, he's going to be listed as a tight end, and then Burton's going to be listed as the fullback. And Adam Trotman, obviously, the last year of his 2 year deal, that's a given. And like we mentioned, Caleb Loner, you drafted him in the seventh, he'll make it. Assuming that Lucas Kroll doesn't push it, because that's still going to be a tight end competition in training camp and the rest of OTA. So we'll see that. We'll see how that goes in the preseason as well. But yeah, I do agree. Those will be the four. Overall, we talked about Evan Engram a lot in our last episode. But what are you thinking in terms of like what his stat predictions are going to look like? Because some fans are calling you Evan completely crazy for thinking that he could reach that 1,000 yard mark, which I don't personally think is that crazy, just because like Sean Payton talked all offseason, constantly using that word, the Joker, and you bring in that Joker finally, and you're expecting me to believe that he's not going to have a decent amount of yardage given the fact that Sean Payton used that term so frequently. Like he's clearly going to have some sort of plan where he's going to, specifically design plays for Evan Engram on this offense. And just like based off of what we like perceive his usage to be in this offense, I think he's going to be used more as a receiver than a tight end, which obviously is going to warrant the belief that he's going to have more receiving yards than your standard tight end. I don't think he's going to hit that 1,000 yard mark just because of the injuries and everything. But like, what are you thinking for like what his role is going to be this season?
I think he's going to be like a heavy volume receptions tight end. Like I think Ingram's going to, really, really work a lot over the middle of the field, and I think that in turn that's going to, open up guys like Mims and Sutton on the outside, and just like helping because that was the problem is we didn't have that guy that was like really, really solid consistently over the middle at separating. I mean, Vele had his moments and everything, but
Yeah.
it really, really handicaps you when you're, unable to, obviously not unable to throw over the middle of the field, but when you have a guy like Evan Engram who's constantly a threat up the seams over the middle of the field, defenses have to scheme against that. Like Evan Ingram's going to be one of those players, especially, knowing Sean Payton in defensive meetings before games, other teams are going to be circling Evan Ingram's name because they're going to know that he's going to be a focal point of the offense, especially over the middle of the field, because it's a vulnerability if you have a tight end that's such a mismatch like Evan Engram working over the middle of the field. And in turn, when you're, sending extra eyes at the middle of the field and extra bodies, you're going to get good matchups on the outside, and diversions and safeties are going to make mistakes. And, it just opens up the field way more for the rest of the guys. So I don't see him getting like huge big plays, like you know what I mean? Like I think his yards per catch are going to be very, very low, maybe lower than career average, but I think he's going to have a high reception number and just high volume on just like, little check downs, tight end screens, little drags over the middle of the field on play action and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm expecting him to have around that. Maybe I'm being a little bit pessimistic, but I don't see him having any more than like 750 yards. I see him having more around that 700 yard mark, just because I think Pat Bryant, Cortland Sutton are going to have pretty decent seasons in terms of yardage. Like I said, I don't know if one of those guys is gonna go crazy putting up 1,000 plus, 1,100 plus yards. And still Devon Vele. Like I didn't talk about him, mention him in the last pod, but you guys know, if you guys consistently watch this podcast, I'm like sky high on Devon Vele. Like he is literally gonna be our starting slot receiver, assuming that Troy Franklin doesn't take that role. So, and like I mentioned, Troy Franklin's still there. Like I don't know if a tight end, and I don't know. It's kind of hard for me to believe. Am I wrong for that? Hard to believe a tight end's gonna like put up crazy numbers like that?
Really, we don't know. At the end of the day, we don't know what Sean Payton's looking at this roster, and
Yeah, true.
because I'm like, obviously he's got his playbook, but his playbook is dedicated to the personnel that he has around him, right? So it depends on who's got the hot hand and everything like that. So it's very hard to tell, especially not having played any games, seeing one day's worth of videos from OTAs. So I think it's really hard to tell who's going to have a good season until we at least see like at least something, right? Like just like scrimmages in training camp and like preseason games. I think it's going to be a lot easier to identify who's going to be the number one target, so to speak. Like the guy that's just going to, be
Draw
that
all the
volume guy.
attention.
Yeah. So it's really hard to say right now and at this time, but I think we'll definitely be able to get a better analysis on that. But as of right now, it's all just like hearsay.
Yeah, although like I remember last year we were talking during training camp and during preseason, like, we thought Marvin Mims was being hidden. Like Sean Payne didn't want to really like unveil his full potential during preseason and whatnot. We saw a lot of flashes from him in training camp, which warranted our belief that he was gonna like come onto the scene real fast and just be that guy for the Broncos. I think we might be in for a little bit of surprise again this offseason. Maybe some players will shine during training camp and preseason that won't really be that productive the first several weeks of the season, whereas some players, it'll be vice versa, obviously. So, yeah, I've mentioned I think Pat Bryant, Cortland Sutton, and then Marvin Mims will definitely have some pretty relatively bigger seasons. And we mentioned Bo Nix and how he's going to utilize the tight end position, wide receiver position. I said in our last pod I could see him being like that point guard type quarterback. What are your thoughts on what his stat line is going to look like in 2025? Because I know some of the listeners have been wanting to get our thoughts on that. Right now, my current stat prediction, and for anyone that doesn't know, last season he threw 29 touchdowns to 12 interceptions and 3,775 yards. My prediction, I have him at 26 passing touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and 3,800 passing yards. I do have him decreasing the passing touchdowns a little bit and the passing yards going up 25 yards, just because I do think there's going to be a way more effective running game this season. I think RJ Harvey and a more improved Audric Estime is just going to help him out so much and bring in more play action, those intermediate passes, rather than Bo Nix constantly having to be like Superman like we saw in like the Bengals game and all those other games where he's having to play catch up.
Yeah, no, I think that he breaks the 4,000 mark. I think that he has, like you said, less touchdowns than last year, like around that 26 mark. And because is that what you said?
Yeah.
26? That was your prediction? Yeah, around that. And I think, yeah, like 8 or 9 interceptions. I don't think I think he definitely throws less than 10 interceptions. It might even be less than that, to be honest with you, man.
Yeah.
Especially, when we're not in obvious passing situations and we can really utilize play action, playing with a lead and stuff like that. And when we actually have a developed run game. Unfortunately, play action very rarely worked last year because of how piss poor our running game was. So I definitely think that this year it's going to make a huge difference, and again, open that playbook up a lot more
Yeah.
for Sean Payton. We know he loves his play action, and I think that a lot of guys that will thrive in play action are Evan Engram's one of them. So I think that it's very hard to say, but as long as our run game is succeeding, I can definitely see Bo having an amazing stat line, especially touchdown to interception ratio wise.
Yeah, 100% agree. Let us know down in the comments below how many touchdowns and interceptions and passing yards you think Bo Nix will have this season. What are you thinking for Evan Engram this season? Obviously, there's a ton of hype, even before the Broncos signed him, that the constantly, like all Broncos country on social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, just wanting Evan Engram after we signed Hufanga and Greenlaw. And now that we got him, some fans have relatively high expectations, some rather not. I have him around that 600-yard mark, but let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. With that being said, I'm your host, Amir Farrell, my co-host, Evan Petruk. See you guys in the next one. Peace.